1. Been in the same company for over 10 years. Started as an intern but grew to the high levels. Not really a high rank, but I daily interact and I could easily chat with any top manager and director. Big ol' corporate with a not so unusual not my problem attitude among the long-time hires and a lot of bureaucracy. Among the employees in our department, we had a senior particularly fond of the not my problem philosophy, Joe. Joe started as a system administrator, but he was doing nothing and would refuse to do so. He has even been investigated shortly after I started. He received a lot of complaints from literally everyone that had to work with him. A few years after I was hired, to push Joe working, management thought it was a good idea to move him to a higher responsibility, lower skills position, making him a mandatory point of contact for either compliance or provisioning of anything. His job would be to forward your requests and assign you hardware or accounts. As well, Joe was moved manager a few times since no one wanted to deal with that attitude. And then there is me. I needed services, hardware, compliance, and so on for myself, my team, other business units, and my clients. Yeah, I worked with and for a lot of entities. I had to go through him so many times. All my requests were first going to him, and then I would very often have to reroute them through his manager in order to be served. Communications were so bad that they were all happening through emails or any other traceable form, with both mine and his chain of management in CC, because I couldn't be bothered anymore with all the deflection of responsibilities. To cite an example, when GDPR was being implemented, May 2018, I had to get him to approve the services I had online for our clients as GDPR compliant. I had an email trail of 1 year asking for updates about it without any answer. The guy did nothing as usual. 17th of May, a few days before the legal enforcement, Joe implied on an email that my services couldn't be online anymore because of my laziness in not working to make them secure. I raged. Oh, I raged. I immediately took him, his manager, my manager, put them together in a room. I shouted that I've been emailing him about compliance for over a year, that I received no answer, and that I still had no answer. Therefore, fine, put everything offline. But I couldn't be the one to blame. I kept shouting that my working hours are 8 per day, and I follow multiple projects. A week was missing from the official enforcement. I could not be expected to deliver anything in such a short notice. I was trying to flag the issue on time to get things on track, Joe's task. Playing the blame game backfired enormously in my favor. Well, one more crack in our lovely relationship, but compliance magically arrived. Fast forward a few years later, and my laptop is giving me some troubles and randomly not turning on or not charging. My manager panics. If I'm unreachable, things could go ugly very fast if something happens. Not only if something breaks, but even last-minute requests. Plus, the productivity of the team goes down. Who is the point of contact for hardware? Joe. Hey Joe, I need a new laptop. Could you help? It's a bit of an emergency.
No can do. I don't manage laptops anymore. You have to ask the company support now.
Heard that before. Hey, head of finance, sorry to bother you. My manager might have contacted you already, but I'm urgently trying to get a new laptop. Any shortcut?
Did you try Joe?
Sure thing I did. Not his job, apparently. Let me talk to him. Just a couple of minutes pass. Joe realized that there are some spare laptops for emergencies. Since this counts as one, you can come and collect it directly from his lab tomorrow. I'll be there too. Come talk to me so we arrange the transfer. Guess whose responsibility was to register any transfer of asset? Joe. And guess who didn't register the asset? Also Joe. Fast forward a few years, time to leave the company. I was a bit fed up, and Joe played a big role in that. I returned all my equipment except for the one laptop that Joe didn't register. In my wildest dream, he will have to pay out of pocket for a ghost laptop, and will be forced to work for real. But most probably no one will care, and Joe will keep doing what he does best. Absolutely nothing. 2. When I was younger, I worked in an office for a printing company. My boss was notorious for his strict adherence to company policies, particularly when it came to dress code. One day he made an announcement that all employees must wear black footwear with no exceptions. This rule caught my attention, and I decided to have some fun at my boss's expense because he really was an awful micromanaging boss. You could never do anything right. So the next day, I walked into the office wearing black flippers, diving flippers, instead of traditional black shoes, which is clearly how black footwear is meant to have been interpreted. As I made my way down the hallways, all my colleagues couldn't help but burst into laughter. The sight of a professional employee strutting around in flippers was too amusing to resist. Word quickly spread, and soon everyone was giggling and peeking out of their cubicles to catch a glimpse of my act of defiance, or, shall we say, malicious compliance. When the boss caught sight of my unconventional footwear, his face turned bright red with anger. He stormed over, veins pulsating on his forehead, and everything ready to shout. However, before he got a chance to say anything, I pointed out that I was indeed following his policy of wearing black footwear. I think he was close to completely losing it because he stormed off into his office, grunting like a warthog. Technically, I had complied with his instructions, and there was no explicit mention of traditional footwear in the policy. He couldn't take any disciplinary action without seeming unfair. My colleagues found the solution even more hilarious at this point. I got many compliments for outsmarting our strict boss. From that day forward, my act of malicious compliance became legendary in the office. It sparked a newfound sense of rebellion, with employees pushing the boundaries of the dress code in hilarious and imaginative ways. Some wore black sneakers with flashing LED lights, while others donned black high-heeled slippers. The office became a more vibrant and joyful place, with employees embracing their individuality while technically adhering to his directives. The absurdity of the situation left him fuming, but he didn't want to look stupid by changing his policy again so quickly. It's safe to say we didn't see him in the main office much after that day. In the end, I hope he learned an invaluable lesson about the importance of specifics and clarity, while also learning that people can have fun while working to create a better morale and improve the workplace. But a week later, he was gone. He was replaced by a lovely lady that found this whole situation very funny, and complimented us all on how good the morale was here. 3. This malicious compliance takes place in the Czech Republic, where many people are often really grumpy. My girlfriend, 30, and I, 21, male, were waiting for a bus ride to go to her hometown for a wedding. As you'd expect, we had 3 bags, and they were packed to the point where zipping the bag required you sit on it, especially her bag, as she was one of the bridesmaids. Before we boarded the bus, we had to wait for the passengers who had paid beforehand to reserve seats. My girlfriend and I had not prepaid. We were in somewhat of a line, which allowed for the passengers who reserved seats to pass. The line for unreserved seat passengers was essentially respected. Except for this woman. She arrived when the line was somewhat being formed and decided to stand next to us. As our turn to board was coming up, she quickly scooted in front of my girlfriend and looked forward as if she was completely oblivious to the fact she had done something that was traditionally frowned upon. My girlfriend was quite obviously annoyed and started saying out loud in English. Much of the older generation in this country doesn't understand English very well. "Well, that's a bitchy thing to do. Can you believe this woman?" I was calm as I had counted how many people had already boarded the bus, and there was still a good chance we'd find seats together in the unreserved rows, so I didn't think it called for any type of confrontation. Still, I had calmly responded, "Let's be honest, we can't be surprised when bitches do bitchy things." Looking back, it was unnecessary, but I was also tired and the bags were heavy, so I was a bit impatient. We finally sit down, and my girlfriend chose to sit in the 2 free seats behind her. I would have chosen the seats in front of her, and then just slowly reclined my seat back every few minutes so that she wouldn't have noticed my little act of revenge, but this ended up being better. It's important to note that the row the woman chose was the last row with an overhead shelf for bags. The shelf was a little longer in the front, so every person essentially had space for their bag if they moved their bags a little towards the front of the bus. It's also important to mention that the shelf was essentially empty, and I could have placed another 5 bags next to ours if I wanted to. We finally hit the road, and the woman is talking on the phone, loudly, I might add, saying how she's going to visit her grandson, who is so sweet, but that he plays metal music in his room and she can't stand the sound of it. After she finishes the call, she takes off her windbreaker and plans to put it above her seat. She finally sees that my bag is directly above her seat, and instead of moving her jacket 35 centimeters to the right of the shelf, or sitting her jacket on the empty seat beside her, she decides to confront me in an entitled tone.
Excuse me, young man, but I can't put my jacket anywhere because your fat bag is in the way.
I was bored, so decided to act like this was a tragedy. Oh no! What will we do? Maybe if we put our heads together, we can think of a solution? Her face turned from shock to old communist grandma rage. She yelled back,
Well, don't you know that half the shelf space is for the person directly above the seat?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I truly didn't know that was like an unspoken rule. So the space above your head is only for you and the potential passenger next to you? I say, acting truly sorry and embarrassed.
Yes, it is. So please move it to your spot, she says, acting victorious.
Of course, right away. I quickly get up, take my girlfriend's bag off the shelf, and place it on the seat where I was sitting next to her. I keep my bag in the exact same spot and plop myself right next to the old woman with a grin. The look on her face was absolutely priceless as she was trying to understand what just happened. I smile at her, take my headphones out, and play some death metal way too loud so that she can definitely hear. I might have hearing loss. I don't even like death metal, but it was definitely worth it knowing she was annoyed the whole time. My girlfriend was sad I didn't sit next to her for the bus ride, but she ultimately agreed. It was the best way to get back at her. 4. So my old boss was a narcissistic demon from hell. I know that sounds melodramatic, and that the term narcissist is overused these days, but I promise this time it applies. I also started researching on how to interact with narcissists, and almost as soon as I started grey-rocking her, she lost interest and went to find another victim. For context, I work in the healthcare field, which is perfect for people like her, because she could constantly use her employees' desire to do right by their patients against them. Her favorite things were to put you on the spot in front of people, and to question your dedication, intelligence, and integrity at any given opportunity. A huge pet peeve of hers was if she didn't have all attention on her at all times. There was a very much teacher-student dynamic at play, which obviously didn't sit well with me as a full-grown adult human. I looked at my phone once during a meeting to check the calendar because we were talking about the schedule. When I looked up, everyone had stopped talking, and she leaned forward in her seat, eyes wide, staring at me with such a look of disgust in her face. My eyes drifted from her for 5 seconds. In trainings, she wouldn't teach us anything about the topic at hand, and would instead talk about herself and her resume for an hour and a half, with no regard for anyone else's time or commitments. If you dared to look at the clock during one of these meetings, she would call you out and tell you she wasn't done yet, or ask if you had somewhere else to be, etc. And God forbid you yawned during a meeting with her. But she was our director at the time, and we just had to take it. Cut to nearly a year after I started, and she announces that she's taking over a different team and will no longer oversee our department. You internal cheering and bottle popping. We had one last meeting with her and our new director to discuss the transition, etc. And I was gifted the beautiful opportunity to mess with her just a little. She was seated at one end of a long conference table, and I was at the end on the same side as her, with 1 or 2 people between us. Toward the beginning of the meeting, I noticed if I angled myself just right in my chair, she wouldn't be able to see me, because a coworker's head blocked her view. Obviously, she notices immediately and scoots back a little in her chair so she can maintain eye contact with me. After some time passes, I move again and she can't see me, so she scoots, so I do it again and again, until the end of the meeting rolls around, and she's basically scooted all the way back against the wall, so she can continue to keep an eye on me. I confessed to my coworkers once we were free from her, and they were all confused about why she was acting so weird. And it gave us all a good laugh, and also took some of the fear we all had from her away. I left that job a while ago because it was killing my soul. But that was definitely one of my proudest moments, even if it was petty. Sometimes petty is all you have. And like Kevin Malone said, it's just nice to win one. 5. A woman bought a designer handbag from me online. Then about a week later sends an extremely rude message claiming it had damages and smelled funny. She wanted her money back immediately and demanded I send it to her on Venmo, against policy and a massive red flag for fraud, or else she would file a chargeback. Threatening sellers with chargebacks is also against policy. Being as it was the weekend and her language was really abusive and gross, I decided not to interrupt my weekend and waited till Monday morning to respond, which is within the terms of service. She was really aggressive and sent me more rude messages, demanding I relent and pay her off-site or else. I checked her feedback, and at least one other seller reported that she also tried to coerce them into an off-site refund with a chargeback. Buyers have enormous latitude in online sales, and to be honest, I just didn't want to deal with her anymore, so on Monday, I responded offering her a full refund in exchange for a free return. And though I did not believe she was being honest, I gave her the benefit of the doubt and said maybe it was damaged in transit. I fully expected her to return the wrong item, but after I gave her a free refund return option, she then filed the chargeback anyways, claiming the item was not as described, then left very negative feedback. Both the feedback and existence of a chargeback claim harms my presence on the site and hits me with fees and an automatic refund for her, taking money out of my account automatically and messing with my budget. There's a reason why most sellers will do almost anything to avoid chargebacks. It really is inconvenient and damaging for us. Now, being as this used to be my profession, I know that it's considered fraudulent to file a chargeback when the retailer has offered a full refund. So naturally, I appealed the case and it was decided in my favor, and her refund was reversed. I blocked her and moved along. Fast forward about 2 weeks, and the original item shows up on my doorstep returned, and without any of the damages that she complained about. Now, I realize in this situation I have no legal obligation to refund her at all, but better still is that when I went to the seller dashboard to try, I don't even have the option to refund her because the case she opened was closed and decided in my favor. I still felt a little funny about relisting, so I emailed the site for more direction. Apparently, when you file the chargeback, you are forfeiting your right to seek a refund directly from the retailer, in favor of seeking a refund from your financial institution. She had apparently messaged the site and modified my feedback to demand a refund after the chargeback failed, and then sent them the tracking number of the item she ultimately returned, saying that since she had a tracking number, they had to refund her. But a failed chargeback is final in this case, and because her behavior was deemed fraudulent, the website itself is not able or willing to refund her anymore either. The only way I could give her her money back was if I unblocked her, exchanged info, and sent the refund on Venmo or PayPal, which are linked to my personal email and phone number. Given how rude she had been, I have no interest in opening up any unmediated communication, and I'm certainly not going to give her my personal contacts of any kind. So, by following through on her coercive threat to file a chargeback against me, she managed to lose both the item and her money. A chargeback is not the silver bullet people think it is. If she had been even reasonably polite, I'd have had no issue communicating with her directly to give her money back, even if she had filed the chargeback. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 263. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, if you could please hit the like button, and if you're feeling fancy, share it around on your social media. I do greatly appreciate that. It helps YouTube know you like the video and that they should probably be showing it to more people. Right, let's see. No other business today as far as I'm aware, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... Well, actually, before I go on to that, just an update for anyone who might be wondering. I mentioned my partner Jack was coming for a visit, flying over from the States. They've been here for a little while now. We're all very much settled in and having a great time. And quite frankly, we're so happy. I kind of hope they never leave, but they have to. I suppose they've got to leave so they can come back at some point, so that's the idea. But quite frankly, we're in our own very happy little world. Okay, now the question of today. And today's question is... If you could make someone else fart on your behalf... This is actually inspired by a Harmontown podcast, except I've cleaned it up a little bit. They weren't talking about farts. Who would it be and why? You just sort of bestow a fart upon them. They would be like a flatulent avatar, a fartatar. Personally, I would find the nastiest, most selfish person I could, and I would let them do my farting for me. Because they deserve it. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.